It doesn't look good. And Zelensky in particular is someone that frankly should have been removed quite early. And people say, well, how could you do that? Well, you suspend all American military aid to Ukraine. Number one, we've discussed this before. And then you get all of the Americans who are in Ukraine out. I mean, Trump quite recently said, this is not my war. This is Biden's war. Wrong. It's your war now, President Trump. You haven't taken the decisive action to distance yourself from this disaster. So here we sit. And nothing concrete or fundamental has occurred.
Now, I'm hopeful that maybe those dynamics are shifting. Maybe they should have been the case from day one. I think his claim that he's going to have this over in one day, in 24 hours, obviously that was hyperbole from the beginning, but I thought that it would imply that he was going to be ready to take decisive action on day one, which could have brought this to some kind of a conclusion, probably even already, if he had done the things that you suggested. But belatedly or not, it looks like he may finally have had his patience run out. And one of the things that he's being vilified for, especially in the European community right now, is because he said in an interview last night, Zelensky actually started this war. There's a bit of a nuance here, as you'll see at the beginning of this clip.
Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles, you know. He's against, listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
What do you make about the claim that Zelensky or Biden could have stopped the war before?
Biden was always in the position as the president of the United States and the leader of NATO to stop all of it quite quickly. That was always doable. So that much is true. When you start talking about the rest of it, I think the president, frankly, is a little confused. This is a much more complex, complicated matter than apparently he realizes. This whole business was a function of NATO expansion from the beginning. And President Putin has been saying for years, over and over and over again, don't push this envelope. We don't want NATO on our borders. If it shows up on our borders, there will be a war. In the meantime, we poured billions and billions and billions into Ukraine for the purpose of building up what turned out to be the largest army in NATO. By the time the Russians went into Ukraine, you had almost 800,000 men under arms in Ukraine. They had some of the best equipment and weaponry that you could get. And they had ostensibly, in retrospect, the enormous benefit of American military leadership and strategy, and secondarily British military leadership and strategy, which is a hell of a note, frankly, since it's been catastrophic for Ukraine. But the point is, President Trump might also think about taking his own advice when it comes to size and numbers. He was talking about Zelensky. Well, Zelensky was promised by us that he would win because we would stand behind him and provide him with everything that we could. That was always a dangerous promise and not one that was likely to be fulfilled. But President Trump needs to re-examine the wisdom of waging a tariff war or an economic war on China that is infinitely larger and whose markets are frankly increasingly broader and deeper than our own. So we're in the same position now vis-a-vis China as Zelensky is with Russia.
You look back, and Zelensky himself was the guy from 2019 on that refused to comply with the Minsk agreements. He refused the opportunity from Putin in December 2021 to get the war off. He added the law in March of 2021 that said they were going to now retake the positions, the areas that Russia had, to include Crimea, which was a red cape in front of a bull. Then, of course, he refused the April 2022 deal in Istanbul, et cetera, and is refusing now to do anything that Trump wants to bring the war to an end. So if you're looking at who's keeping the war going, it seems to me it's Zelensky.
Yeah, well, obviously, Zelensky is a criminal. He was a nothing comedian who spoke only Russian and had been raised in Russia, had no real connection whatsoever to Ukraine in any way, shape, or form, and was picked by one of the oligarchs and Victoria Nuland and the rest of these people to be the puppet for Ukraine. I mean, this is the sort of thing we tried in Georgia. The Russians intervened there militarily and killed it and put an end to it. We've tried to set up puppet regimes all over the place, ostensibly for the purpose of either harming or containing what we said was the dangerous state of Russia. All of this nonsense needs to come to an end. But I think the president is surrounded by people who are no less invested in the lie and the fiction than the man you just quoted. I mean, if you go through these people like Gorka and Waltz and Rubio, and others, my God, they live in a world that doesn't exist. It's all fiction. Let's stop for a minute and understand a couple of things that emerged from this Ukraine war that nobody else ever comes forward and mentions. Number one, what was demonstrated conclusively on the battlefield in Ukraine? What's being demonstrated conclusively is that NATO equipment, NATO military technology, which is in large measure American, is inferior to the equipment the Russians have brought to the battlefield. Secondly, NATO tactics, so-called NATO operational art, is stuck in the distant past. It's ill-suited to the modern battlefield. And the people that have paid the price for this are the Ukrainians who've been forced into fighting it. So that's very, very important. And in the meantime, in this stupid tariff attack on most of all China, and vacillating back and forth between attacking China economically and then making peace with it, we've made fools of ourselves, and we've demonstrated that in addition to no longer being the military power we once were, we're no longer the economic power we think we are. So these are the two great insights that are settling into the BRICS community. If you live in Japan, China, Korea, India, Iran, anywhere, it's hard to miss this. The people in Brazil haven't missed it. The people in most of the world haven't missed it. But this man in England completely fails to grasp it, as do too many people in Washington. President Trump needs to be the platonic figure who leads everybody out of the cave into the daylight. I just don't know if he can do it, because he's torn and he keeps vacillating between one position and the other. That's the prescription for failure in national leadership.
One of the other areas that has led to some disputes, but it looks to me like that Trump is finally coming to the point to where he's ready to say, all right, we're just going to cut bait here, because he has started saying actually a lot more often now, this whole issue about this war is actually Biden's war. I know that you're saying, well, now it's his war, but he may be using this as a device to get this off the table.
Do you have a reaction to Russia's Palm Sunday attack?
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake. But I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing.
You said they made you were told they made a mistake. Do you mean it was unintentional?
They made a mistake. I believe it was. Look, you're going to ask them. This is Biden's war. This is not my war. I've been here for a very short period of time. This is a war that was under Biden. He gave him billions and billions of dollars. He should have never allowed it. Remember this. This is Biden's war. I'm just trying to get it stopped so that we can save a lot of lives. They happen to be Ukrainian and Russian lives. But all I want to do is get it stopped.
I want to zero in on that issue he's talking about. That's this attack that happened in Sumy, where a lot of civilians were killed, and virtually all of the Western media is, seizing on this as, just the latest ever that Putin is this evil guy. He just intentionally attacked this place for no good reason other than to kill civilian people. That was his intended target, was to destroy that. But then we have information by a Ukrainian member of the Rada, of their parliament, who came out and said, hey, listen, this is something that we knew about days in advance. There was a military award ceremony by the 117th Brigade that had been placed there in the middle of Sumy on a day, on Palm Sunday, etc. And she was saying, hey, we told you guys not to do this, and you went ahead and did it anyway, and then Russia struck it. In response to this, Sergei Lavrov yesterday was unequivocal that, yeah, we attacked it, but here's the reason why.
There have been countless instances of artillery and air defense systems being deployed in urban areas near kindergartens. There are millions of videos online showing Ukrainian women screaming at soldiers to get away from stores and playgrounds. Yet this practice continues. We have evidence regarding who was present at the facility that was struck in Sumy. It was yet another gathering of Ukrainian military commanders with their Western counterparts. Whether under the guise of mercenaries or some other pretext, I don't know. NATO military personnel are present there and directly overseeing operations. Everyone knows this. The New York Times recently explained how the Americans have played a decisive role in attacks against Russia from the very beginning. Without their involvement, most long-range missiles would never have even left their launch sites.
Is this just Sergei Lavrov just trying to put a good face on something that was bad, or is he telling the truth?
My experience over the last 3+ years has been that the Russians have always told the truth. The Ukrainians have nearly always lied, and the United States and Great Britain and other Western outlets for the media, thanks to MI6 and CIA, have done everything in their power to disseminate the lies. So I'm sure the man's telling the truth. Go back to Bucha. Remember Bucha? Oh, the Russians have done this. They tied people's hands behind their back, shot them through the heads, then they threw the bodies in the streets and piled them up in the cellars. It's all nonsense. We know that now. It's absolute lie. Let's just move on. This is a lot of nonsense. There's something that's even more important. In April, I received a phone call from, this is April of 2022. I received a phone call from Mar-a-Lago, and the individual on the other end said, well, we're interested in what you think about Ukraine. And I said, well, sure. I said, the first thing to consider is that the Ukraine war needs to end immediately. We should negotiate an end to this, convene a peace talks as soon as possible. And they said, why? I said, because the Ukrainians are going to be crushed. They have no chance of winning. And the Russians aren't even fully engaged. But when they do, it'll be over. Well, everybody here says the Ukrainians are winning. This is the sort of stupidity and ignorance and arrogance that has passed for advice to the president. People around him need to go away. He's got the wrong people advising him, in my judgment, on just about everything. And if he persists in this, we're going to be at war very shortly in the Middle East, and we're going to watch our economy collapse into ruins. I don't know what else to say, Dan, because that's where we're headed. There is a flight from reality inside the administration as well as inside the Beltway. You can't turn to people like Rubio or Gorka or Waltz or Hegseth. These people are all part of this sort of self-induced fiction that has no bearing on reality. They have a false picture of everything. The world that we live in, our strategic posture, our capabilities, it's very, very dangerous. I don't know how the president fixes it, but as long as these people are there, it's going to be very difficult for the president to get out of this, to get out of the mess he's in Ukraine and disengage fundamentally from it, unless he does exactly what I've been saying for many months now. And this started, you and I talked about this before the election, after the election, and have continued to talk about it. Suspend all support for Zelensky and this criminal regime, the most corrupt, one of the most, if not the most corrupt country in the world, where the population is being ruthlessly exploited by its own government, and millions of lives are lost and destroyed as a result, all unnecessarily. So he's got to make some profound changes. He needs to do it very quickly. Get rid of these people. If he doesn't, then he's going to be standing on the bridge of the Titanic, waving to the few people on lifeboats that were smart enough to get off.